Now I welcome Ghazala ma'am to take the session ahead.
Thank you so much, Ankesh. Thank you very much. I welcome all of you to this session on teaching young learners reading and writing skills using pedagogical variations. Now, teachers, can you imagine a world devoid of words? We live in a time when words have the power to make or break. So words can be defined as symbols, and reading is the process of looking at these series of written symbols and getting meaning out of them. So when we read, we use our eyes as a tool to receive these symbols, and our brain converts these symbols into words, thus allocating meaning to them based on the context that we set for their usage. So, dear friends, reading is a cognitive activity that enables us to have a firm command over language. Why is reading so fruitful? Now, this is a very pertinent question. Why is reading so fruitful? Why do we have to begin with this skill right at the infancy stage of a child, of a young learner? I read somewhere reading is that fruitful miracle of a communication in the midst of solitude. I'll repeat that again. Reading is that fruitful miracle of a communication in the midst of solitude. So if you love to read, you can never be alone. It is reading and reading with passion that enables you to differentiate between solitude and loneliness, between serenity and complete silence. It is reading that enables you to have a sensibility, to have a way with words. Words have the power to transport you anywhere. With the help of your imagination, you can go places. You know what? I will introduce you to a friend of mine. He is a very dear friend. Meet Kolhu. Now, Kolhu just heard me speaking to you all, and then he wrote a message for me. I'll just show you the message written by Kolhu. So he wrote this message to me. I hope you can see it. It must be a mirror image of the message. I'll read it out to you. Let me read the message that he has given me. He says, you know, I love chocolates. I wish I could visit a chocolate factory. Okay, so Kolhu, I have this message for you and I have written this down. I have written this message for Kolhu. And let me also tell you, my dear friends, Kolhu has this habit of writing down messages. And I see lots and lots of messages, on my refrigerator every morning when I wake up. There are messages by Kolhu. So it's a very good way of expressing, right? So I gave him this message in written and I said, oh dear Kolhu, just pick up Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. All right. So if you want to taste chocolates, you can just go through the book and you will actually taste the chocolates there. Okay, so this is what reading does to us. Now, friends, let's talk about reading to children and reading with children. Reading to children begins at a very early stage in the life of a learner. It begins at the early childhood stage. Parents read to their children. Now, if you must have observed in many countries, unfortunately, it's not very common in our country, but in many countries, you will find infants in their cribs and parents sitting next to them reading out stories. And there are so many innumerable variety of reading material available. You have flannel books, you have eco-friendly plastic books, paper books, all wooden books, different kinds of books to familiarize a child with the nuances of reading, with the formation of words, with the sound of words, because that's what initially a young child in his infancy does. So that's a very good habit, because what happens is at that stage, children might not understand words in a proper context, but they get used to the sounds, to the sound of words, sounds of letters, the intonation, expressions. So reading is magical in that sense. And this happens right from 0 to 12 months of a child's childhood, infancy stage. And this is also, the attempt to get the child ready for school. It's a readiness to read phase that he goes through. So that's a very, very important phase. And I believe that teachers need to be in touch with parents, and they need to bring about this awareness that readiness to read is very important, and it must begin right from home. So the love for book begins from that stage. Now, gradually, as the child becomes word friendly, parents and teachers, when he gets out of the boundaries of home and enters the school premises, what happens? Then he becomes used to reading along with teachers and parents and friends and peers. So, this transitioning that takes place from one stage to another adds multiple dimensions to the growth of a learner. At the primary level, the teachers start focusing on teaching the young learner using the multimodality approach. Now, I'll tell you what multimodality approach is. When attempting to enhance the communication skills of a child, the teacher uses activities, which is an integration of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Okay, so it's a multimodality approach that teachers use in the classroom. Today, also, we are going to focus on two skills here, reading and writing both. All right, so the prime focus on teaching skills, reading and writing, is done in a way that all the skills of LSRW, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they're all integrated. That is why today we're going to focus on these two skills, reading and writing. And I'm going to share lots and lots of activities, practical activities, so that you can take back these activities to your classrooms. And also, if you're taking online classes, you can use these activities with your students in your virtual classrooms. Okay, so I'm going to begin this session with this beautiful quote that I just love. You can read it. To read is to fly. It is to soar to a point of vantage which gives a view over the wide terrains of history, human variety, ideas, shared experience, and the fruits of many inquiries. All right? To read is to fly and spread out the words of imagination. Even a little chick can fly up to that vantage point there that you see in the picture. All right? So imagination can take you anywhere. Okay, let me tell you what. This little ladybird, can you see this ladybird? She just whispered something in my ears. And I'll tell you what she whispered. She also has this habit of writing down, right? So she says, words can make or break or shake. Words can make or break or shake or take you to a hill or lake. Words can bake a chocolate cake or help a farmer use a rake and make him sow a white snowflake and make him sow a white snowflake. So, what if the vanilla ice is fake? In the world of words, I sleep and wake. In the world of words, I sleep and wake. So, that's the power of words. Now, let me introduce you to the outline of the session. As you can see, we're going to focus on these two skills. We're going to talk about different dimensions of reading skills, the strategies of reading skills, writing skills, and what are the approaches that teachers may use in the classroom, the different varieties, the different strategies that the teachers can use in the classroom while teaching, and of course, lots and lots of samples that I can accommodate in this one hour session. All right, so that is what we are going to do. What are the different kinds of texts that our students are exposed to, right? So these are some of them, though there's a variety of texts, and they are exposed to newspaper articles, they are exposed to novels, web pages, bus timetables, train timetables, TV schedules, recipes, great way of learning, restaurant bills, maintenance instructions, news websites. So it's a variety of reading text that's all around us all the time. You visit a hotel and you can just go and pick up brochures from there, visit a shop and pick up those free brochures that you get. So words are all around you. You're surrounded by words. Now think about how we read these things. Do we, for example, read each and every word? All right. Even if we have the skill, the linguistic skills of reading everything, do we read everything in detail? Do we move logically through the text, line by line, or do we read very carefully or just glance about, just go through the text, give it a very cursory look? So I want you to just reflect and think how we go through the text, right? And what is your favorite mode of going through a literary, through any kind of text? You can type your responses in the chat box. Okay. This is an example that I'm giving you. When you go out to a bookshop or to a library and you want to select a book to read, you have a certain book in your mind, you have a certain topic in your mind, maybe a certain author or characters, all right? So how do you select a book? You go through the content pages, all right? As you can see, this boy standing there, he's going through the pages and he says, is this good for me? Let me just go through the content quickly. So what exactly is he doing there? There's a term for it. If you're aware of that term, please text it in the chat box, text it in the box. Okay, another example is when you go to a hotel or a restaurant and you order something to eat, reading a menu card, right? I have conducted a number of activities using the menu card as a resource, and I find it a wonderful resource, a teaching resource for my students here. So you need to set a context. Now here the teacher asks the students to visit a restaurant on a weekend with a group of friends, let's say 5 friends. They will be allowed to spend only rupees 500. I'm quoting an example that I used in my class. They will be allowed to use not more than 500 rupees. So this is the setting of the context. I am contextualizing what I intend to teach them. All right. So the idea is to teach them the vocabulary that they come across when they read a menu, right? It could be what the term starter or appetizer means, what's a main course, what are desserts. So there are so many variety of words that the vocabulary words that the students can go through. Now, how will the students decide what to order? If they are in a group, they will collaborate, they will decide. Now, they have a condition in their mind. The condition is that they will spend not more than 500 rupees. Now, tell me, how are they going to go through the menu? Are they just going to go through it very casually, or are they going to look for specific detail? All right, please text me your answers. Are they going to look for specific details? There is a condition in their minds, right? So they have to stick to that context. And what will they order? It'll again depend on the condition that they have to fulfill. How will they read the menu? Will they go through it casually or read it intently? Okay, this is another way of reading texts. So type in your responses. So let's talk about the different styles of reading. All right, let me see what you have there in your chat box. Okay, can I see the chat box? Oh, it's disappeared. All right. So let's talk about the different styles of reading. So the first style that I want to talk about is skimming. It's called skimming. Skimming is glancing through or through for just getting the gist of something. All right, you just want to have an idea of what the text is about. So you skim through it. It's a casual way of just going through the pages. So when you intend to buy something, buy a book in a bookshop, so probably you would just skim through the content to see that whether it suits you or not. So you skim through it. The technique you use when you're going through a newspaper or a magazine, you read quickly to get the main idea, the main points, and you skip over the details sometimes. It is useful to skim to prepare a passage, uh, to preview a passage before you read it in detail. Many a times you'll notice that you give your students comprehension passages to read, and they have 15 minutes of reading time before their tests. So at that is the time, when they can just skim through it, all right, to get an idea what the passage is about. Or if it's a note-making passage, they can skim through the passage to get an idea what it's about, because 15 minutes of time and they have to go through the entire question paper. So that's a good way. It's a good idea to skim through it, to refresh your understanding of a text after you've read it in detail. So once you've read a text in detail, Then again, to refresh your understanding, you can just skim through it. As I told you, to select a book at the bookstore, to go through a manual to get an idea of what it's like, you can skim through it. To read the review of a book, you can skim through it. All right, a revision of a text, again, you can skim through it. So that is what skimming means. Let's move on to what scanning is. Scanning is done for specific information. When you want to get some specific information from a text, then you go through it, you scan it. All right. So it's something that you do with an intention, with a purpose in your mind. The technique you use when you look up a name in a phone book. All right. When you're searching for a name, then you scan it. Introduce when you are reading the introduction of a or the preface of a book, all right, then you probably scan it. The first or the last paragraphs of chapters or the concluding chapter to get a thorough idea of what the book was about. So that is what scanning is, right? Now, talking about two other ways of reading, two other styles of reading. One is intensive reading and the other is extensive reading. Now, what is intensive reading? Intensive reading, as the name implies, it is reading where testing, evaluating, and increasing knowledge is the primary focus. All right. Then you do a thorough reading and intensive reading of a text. It is done to understand the literal meaning of what the text holds, and that's really, really vital. Reading intensively often includes note taking and attention to details. All right, so you read intently and you take down notes. In intensive reading, there's always the attempt on deconstruction of sentences because it's a very analytical way of looking at the text. You deconstruct sentences, you try to understand the nuances of grammar, vocabulary, syntax, all right, everything that the whole text holds. So intensive reading is done to do this. Deconstruct the sentence, analyze the sentence, understand it, internalize it. That's how intensive reading is done. Okay, so when you are reading reports, for instance, right, medical reports, so you do a very intensive reading of reports. Or when you are really studying for your exams, then you do a very intensive reading of all the lessons. Okay, and here also let me point out that when you do intensive reading, the goals are very, very clear in your mind, and the goals need to be SMART, SMART, SMART. Now, what does SMART stand for? S stands for specific, right? M stands for measurable. The goals, the objectives must be measurable. The teachers need to have those outline objectives that they can measure. Maybe when they're doing the assessment, and these goals need to be achievable or attainable. So A stands for attainable. The goals have to be relevant to the text, all right, to whatever text that the teacher intends to teach. And of course, they need to be time bound, so timely. So that is what a SMART objective stands for. So intensive reading requires that objectives that are laid down by the teachers need to be SMART, all right? Okay, coming to extensive reading. Now, what is extensive reading? Extensive reading, I think everyone just loves to do it. It is reading for fun, reading for pleasure. People who have the passion for reading, people who love books, right? So people who are totally in love with, who are linguistic learners, who love books. So they are the ones who do extensive reading. They read extensively in order to know what's going on in the world of books. And extensive reading can be done as often as possible, anywhere that you feel like. Fluency and total comprehension is not necessary for extensive reading because it is done for the sake of pleasure. Okay, now let's move on to, okay, why is reading so important? Okay, now reading is important because it enables you to understand. It enables you to to link your understanding to prior knowledge, all right? And then what happens? It leads to three basic or fundamental comprehensions. One is literal comprehension, the other is evaluative comprehension, and then you have inferential comprehension. So reading is important because it leads to these aspects of comprehensions. Okay, what is literal comprehension? Literal comprehension is the understanding of the written text, all right? The content of the text and the context of the text. So that's a literal understanding of the text, all right? When you are aware of the literal nuances, the grammar, the vocabulary, and the other aspects that are related to the text. Evaluative comprehension is that kind of a comprehension that requires the readers to have a sense of judgment after having read the text. All right. So it is, as I have often talked about it, that when you read comprehensions, right? So comprehensions are there in your books for the sake of understanding of the text. And it is the attempt of the teacher to take you from that level of comprehension to the level of comprehensibility plus. Now, comprehensibility plus is that level where after reading the text, you have your own point of view. All right. You can analyze the text. You can have a very mechanistic view of the text too. You understand the thematic inferences of the text. So that is where your sense of judgment comes in. You are able to evaluate the quality of the text. And it is not everyone's cup of tea. You arrive at that level after having read extensively, when you really become thorough with words. So that is the stage. That is what reading does. It enables you to have an evaluative comprehension of the text. And the other comprehension is the inferential comprehension. It is the child's ability to understand meaning that is not explicitly stated. All right, the meaning that is implied. So I'm going to introduce you to a lot of examples here, the kind of reading that you can carry out you can engage your learners in the classroom, that will be very implicit too, and the learners will be able to decode and decipher and arrive at inferences and conclusions. So that is the pleasure of reading, and that is what reading does to you. So these three comprehension aspects are very, very important, and that is what happens when you make your students fall in love with reading. It's a very it's a skill that it's so difficult to assess because it's a very receptive skill, but nevertheless, the results are very, very productive, very fruitful if you uh, begin it right at the stage, at the right time when the reading is started, and you don't neglect it, even though because this is one skill that I've seen. It's one of the most neglected skills in the classroom. When a teacher encounters multiple intelligences in the classroom, having to teach so many students, 40, 50 students in a classroom, then this is one skill where the teacher finds it very difficult to allocate, to give time to each and every student in the classroom to see how the reading skills are there in a child. But it has to be taken care of, because otherwise it becomes very difficult for the child to take care of other subjects, because all the other subjects he has to read in English. So now, what all can my students read, right? So these are some of the examples that you can see here. Of course, some are very common examples like books, poetry, signs and symbols, graphs. There's so many more you can add, right? So if you can add more, please add them in the chat box. Maps can also be used as great reading resources. Hieroglyphics are those signs and symbols that the cave people, that the people in the olden days civilizations used, and you have those samples of hieroglyphics in the caves, and I will be introducing you to one sample, I think, in one of the slides. And also, reading moods, faces and moods. All right, so there's this little fellow who asks, now how can we read colors and moods and faces? Again, this is what reading does. It takes you from the level of sense to the level of sensibility. Everybody has senses. We are all equipped with five senses. We have the sense of touch, the sense of sight, the sense of smell, the sense of hearing. All right, but uh, how do we use these senses? Are we using them judiciously? Are we making full use of these senses? Or are we sitting very relaxed and letting technology do our work, and the remote control does everything for us? We need to take care of our senses so that we keep them alive. And it is reading different genres, different kinds of books, poetry, drama, that will take us from the level of sense to a level of sensibility, when you will be able to read in between lines, You will be able to read what silence means. You will be able to read people's faces, people's moods, people's expressions, all that. And you will, of course, and reading and then expressing it another is another thing, right? So you will be able to do that. So that is what we need to prepare our children for. I was telling you about hieroglyphic. See, this is a sample of an hieroglyphic in caves. You must have read about Tutankhamen, right? And the kind of how do we know about all these people, and how do we know about these pharaohs, and also a lot of cave paintings and these visuals in the caves and all that we have. So there are people who read all these. It's amazing how we are still in, we still have these. Okay, there's an activity here. Uh, this is called read, think, and add. Okay, so I'm going to read this out to you. One fine day, I transcended the barriers of time and space and went to meet the cavemen of the lost world. When I entered the place, I saw one sitting on a stone platform, chiseling a knife-like weapon which seemed to be made of bones. I was scared to go ahead, but then I remembered the voice of my teacher. If they look at you, pretend that you are one of them. Raise your hands up in the air and say, Yahoo! I mustered up enough courage and tiptoed forward, tiptoed forward. And then he looked up. Okay, now tell me, add a line here. You are going to add a line here. What happens next? Okay, I want your responses, teachers. Please write your responses in the text box. What happened? So you can have these kind of open-ended story sessions. You can read out to your students and leave the story open-ended. Let them come up with a conclusion. All right. So I would love to read what you all are writing. Mm, uh, today I don't see any, I cannot see any chat here. Is it in the questions section? No, I do not see it there too, but I hope my CUP colleagues are able to see it so they can read it out to me later, right? So please text your responses in the chat box, and then now we move on to the next slide. Okay, what does research show? Okay, there have been so many researchers are still on reading all these skills. So what do researchers show? Researchers show that frequent readers, people who love to read, have a better vocabulary, no doubt about it, better vocabulary because they are able to contextualize their learning. All right, whatever they read, they have a better vocabulary, they have a better understanding of words, they know how to take the word from mere form to meaning. So when they read, if they are voracious readers, they're able to add context to the words and have a good understanding of words. All right, so frequent readers have better vocabulary. Frequent readers use grammar more accurately. Why? Because they know the nuances of grammar. And reading provides them with such a lot of practice that they become aware of the nuances of grammar, and this practice leads to their having a better grasp over their grammar skills. Frequent readers have a positive feeling about language. Now, as I told you that reading is a cognitive activity, there are three domains. Okay, so the two domains are very, very important, the cognitive and the affective domain. When you read, all right, what happened? Reading gives you a sense of, it inculcates a sense of empathy in you, because sometimes, when you read with passion, you tend to get into the skin of the characters. And when you get into the skin of the characters, you can almost feel what the characters go through. All right. So for instance, if, as I said, my little Kolu wanted to go to the chocolate factory of Charlie. And when he started reading this book, he could actually taste chocolate. If you read a good book about having coffee, you can actually get the aroma of coffee. So that's what reading does to you. It lowers your affective filters. Lowering of affective filters is very good for your affective domain, because what happens is you become familiar with all the emotions, with all the feelings that are there inside you. All right. So reading lowers the affective filters. And that is why when your affective filters are lowered, then, and you know what empathy is, you have a clear idea of what emotions are, so you get a very positive feeling about language, because language makes you understand the affective domain. All right. And the affective domain also gets enhanced. Now, frequent readers show higher motivation. Definitely, when it's all plus, 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 and A on all the points that we've talked about so far, obviously the motivation would be very high. Frequent readers not only are motivated by the society around them, by their parents, by their family members, by the teachers, there is a sense of intrinsic motivation too that is there inside them, because they have a good understanding of languages. So they are highly motivated. Frequent readers have better listening, speaking, and writing skills. So now this goes without, I mean, it's undoubtedly very clear that they will have better grasp over all these skills, because reading enhances, and all these skills are, they're all integrated skills. So when you are reading something and you will share your reading, you will be speaking about it. All right, so all the skills are kind of integrated. So all the integration of the skill leads to a better enhancement of your communication skills, of your language skills. So that is what research shows us. Okay, I want you to have a look at this activity. I've termed it as sequencing a sandwich. You know how a sandwich is made? You add layers after layers, right? You add a layer of something, maybe a cheese slice, tomatoes, all right. Then you add whatever you want to add to it, and you bake those layers, and you have a nice, sumptuous sandwich. So here you can see lots of sentences. They are not in a proper sequence. So I want you to sequence those sentences. All right, can you do that right now? I'll give you some time to do it. So try sequencing them in an order that they make sense. Okay. So this is kind of an activity that you can do in your classroom. Take out interesting texts. All right, you could also use text from your textbooks, and when you're doing comprehension passages or stories that you have in the textbook, so you can arrange them in a jumbled kind of a way and ask your students to sequence them. So they will get into the reading mode, they would read the sentences, they would apply logic to their sequencing, and eventually come up with comprehensible ideas. So sequencing those ideas, the organization is very, very important. I will share something here with you. It's a story that's very, very important for organization. Okay. So there was one boy, let's call him Luke. He died one day, and the angel came down to take him up to heaven. All right. So the angel said, come on, now it's your turn. It's your time. So you need to go up now. And God is going to allot either the hell or heaven to you. Do you have any wish? So Luke said, yes, I do have a wish. So the angel asked him, what is your wish? And Luke said, I wish to see these two places, the hell and the heaven, before God assigns one place to me. So the angel smiled and he said, all right, follow me. I'll show you the way. Up and up they went, up and up, above the clouds they went. And then above the clouds, they saw a beautiful blue door. So the angel opened the door, and inside it was a rectangular room. Right in the center of the room was a long rectangular table. And on either side of the table were chairs. All right. And in the center of the table, at regular intervals on the table, were huge tubs of soup. In front of each chair was a spoon with a long ladle. So the angel gestured to Luke and he said, "Come, stand here and see what happens." A bell rang. They watched people streaming in. People came in a line. They stood behind their chairs. Now Luke read the expressions on their faces. They seemed very hungry. They were ravenous. They wanted to eat. It was very clear. From their expressions, from their moods, he could read that they needed to eat and they were hungry. Another bell rang. They took out their chairs. And there were butterflies in their stomachs and they really wanted to eat desperately. The third bell rang. They picked up their spoons, and remember, the spoons had long ladles. They dipped the spoon in the tubs of the soup, and hungrily they started taking in the soup. And what happened? The long ladles of the spoon, they clashed with the ladles of the neighboring person, the person sitting next. And as a result, most of the soup spilled on the ground, and very little could actually go into their mouths. So what happened? It was a whole scenario of utter mayhem and chaos. They started hurling abuses. They started hitting each other with their spoons. They started throwing chairs around in the room. They started tearing each other's hairs, and it was utter chaos in that room. And Luke said, "Oh my God, I know what hell is. Please take me out from here. Let's go." So out they went, and they went to another room. That room had a similar arrangement. Now, when the bell rang, people sat down. Now, this was the second room. Luke and the angel were standing and watching. And the third bell rang. The people sat down. Now, Luke could read that they were really very hungry, those expressions on their faces. He could read them all. And when the bell rang, they dipped their spoons in the tub of soup. And instead of taking the soup to their mouth, they started feeding the person sitting across them. And then what happened? Now, this was a very wise thing to do. No soup spilled on the ground, and they could feed each other. All right, they could satiate their hunger. Nobody went hungry. They shared nice stories. They shared stories of their loved ones. It was a perfect scene of bonhomie and great camaraderie there in that room. And Luke said, "Oh, well, now I know what heaven is, and I wish this room is allotted to me." So that is, the purpose of telling you this is organization of power. It is very important that you organize things in an order. So that is why this activity is related to it, because you need to organize or sequence the words so that there's an organization in the passage and it will make sense. All right. So by now, I hope you must have done the sequencing, and we move on to the next slide. Okay. Let me tell you something. I have this giraffe. Let me show you. He watches too much. He watches a lot of television, and you can see his eyes are literally popping out. All right. Now listen to the story. And the owl came and gave him some sane advice. All right. And this is what the owl had to say to him. So I'm going to read this out, and you are going to listen to this. It's a very interesting poem. It's an abridged poem. A lot of part has been removed. It's from Roald Dahl's book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Uh, the most important thing we've learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we've been, we've watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week, in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? It rots the senses in the head. It kills imagination dead. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you, what use the darling wants to do? How use they keep themselves contented? Before this monster was invented, have you forgotten? Don't you know? We'll say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They'd read and read. I hope you enjoyed this poem, right? And I hope uh, he got some sane advice too. He must read. Okay, now what makes the poem an interesting read? Did you enjoy reading this poem? If it's a yes, show me a thumbs up or write a yes in the text box. Okay, what is it that you liked about it? So you can use poetry as reading comprehension for your students in the classroom, or even online you can do it. And this is one example that I'm giving you. What you can do is you can talk about, the rhyme and rhythm, the figurative, the poetic devices that have been used. There's a lot of hyperbole that has been used in this, eyeballs popping out. Imagery is very strong in this poem. The tone of the poem, the repetition, the words that have been repeated, they also create an impact on the mind of the reader. The personification that has been, the different, as I said, poetic devices that have been used. Or is there any other point that you would like to share? What is it that makes this poem an interesting read? Right? So another thing that you can do in your classrooms, virtual or real, is you can ask students to make these 3 columns. So the first column says what I liked about the poem. All right, the tone, imagery, the message in the poem. What is it that you liked about the poem? So I would want you to text your responses in the text box. Okay, my favorite imagery in the poem. What is it? All right, so write about it. So it's a very good exercise uh, in listening. All right, you are encouraging listening, you are encouraging writing, you are encouraging reading, because later on they'll be sharing their writings. Did you visualize the poem? Which image did you really find strong? All right, I really found that imagery of eyes popping out, eyeballs on the floor, the eyeballs on the floor. So that imagery is a very strong imagery, and it's hyperbole. The rhyming words in the poem. Can you recall any rhyming word? All right. After having heard that poem, now can you recall any rhyming word? So if you recall, please text it in the text box. So that's what you can do with uh, poetry. Also, you can use the PDP model. I'm sure all of you are aware of the PDP model. P stands for pre-reading task, all right? Before you assign a reading task to students, there must always be some kind of a lead-in, some kind of a warm-up, so that your students know what is in store for them, all right? Having a clear objective in mind is very important. So if you intend to engage them in intensive reading, in an understanding of text, then it's a good idea to have a great pre-reading task, so that they become aware, they know what is in store for them. You could ask your students to write their choice. What do they prefer? Do they prefer to read a book, or do they prefer watching a film? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is in the book form, and it's in the form of a film too. So you could ask, that could be a kind of a pre-reading question that you could ask the students. Then while reading tasks, all right, or during reading tasks, ask students to listen to the poem and identify the rhyming words, the imagery that appeals to them. So while they hear the poem, while they listen to the poem, they could also focus on the rhyming words, because their mind would be very active. Okay, so that analysis it keeps them engaged. As a post-reading task, you could ask your students to write a paragraph on the harmful effects of watching too much television. All right, and also teachers could also develop a lot of interesting material related to an exercise, to an activity like this. Let me share some material with you. For instance, here, okay, uh, you could come up with a match the following exercise. As you can see, I have got them all clustered on one slide. So fill in the blank, fill in the gap exercise. All right, you could also have cues there. As you can see, match the following has those words in one column and the meanings in the other column, and you need to find the right meaning for the words. Then having those gaps there, ask the students to fill out the gaps, or have jumbled up letters and ask students to reassemble them in a logical way so that the words come up. Which is the first one? ONGLUE. I'm sure that's an easy one. Okay. The second one, text your answers. I am not able to see your answers today. Anyway, text the third one. Oh dear. Okay. And also, what you can do is I'm sure all of you must have, you're familiar with the game Constantinople. You write the letters on the on the board, and you ask the students to come up with other words, all right, to create more words out of that mother word, you can say, all right. So baby words out of the mother word. So the word imagination is there. For instance, ATOM. Yes, we could take those letters and come up with more words. So you could have an exercise like this. So much from that little text that I read out, right? That little the poem that I read out. It's a long poem, otherwise, if you read it, and it's really, really interesting. Try going through it. Really interesting. Okay, so let's move on to this is really interesting. I'm going to share the story with you. This is the story of uh, Mr. Yellow. All right. So let's assume this is Mr. Yellow now. I'm changing the names of the characters. Mr. Yellow shifted to a new city. One day, while walking back home from office, he met Mr. Blue. Would you like to meet Mr. Blue? There is Mr. Blue, right? So Mr. Yellow is a newcomer in the city, and while walking back from his office, he happened to meet Mr. Blue. He had seen him on and off, but he hadn't really gone and met him. So he decided to go and say hi to him. All right. He went to greet him. And Mr. Blue said, "Welcome to my city," said Mr. Blue. And he hugged him. And when he hugged this new friend, kaboom, a miracle happened. And you know what the miracle was? Can anyone guess what miracle must have taken place when Mr. Blue met Mr. Yellow? Any idea? If you have an idea, I want you to text those ideas in the text box. Any idea what miracle could have happened? Okay. Okay, then I'll tell you what it was. Okay. When Mr. Yellow met Mr. Blue, Mr. Green came up. It was like two is company and three is joy. When Mr. Blue met Mr. Yellow, a third fellow just came out miraculously. All right. So from two, they became three. So it was a great threesome and they remained friends all their lives. Now, we were talking about reading colors, right? Some colors sing together. Why is it you go to the market and you want to buy specific color combinations? Because you feel that those colors, when they are put together, whether they are contrasting colors or complementary colors, they kind of sing out to you, right? So you have a way with colors. You can understand the language of colors. Now here too, when you mix yellow with blue, you create magic, right? So when teachers know how to mix the right ingredient in the classroom, they can also create magic and it'll be multiplied joys in the classroom like we did multiplication right now. It was not a division, it was a multiplication. All right. So two is company and three is joy. So that was what the story of the colors and how to read colors. That was about it. Other resources that you can engage your students as the reading resources that you can use in the classroom are these signs and symbols. Can you identify some of these signs here? If you can identify, please text your answers. All right, I'm sure you can identify a lot of signs and symbols here. You come across these symbols. So you see, we are surrounded by symbols, by text all around us. Okay. This is really something very interesting. And if you recall your childhood, do you remember any text, any story that you probably read in your childhood, the very first book that you read in the childhood, or any story from your text in your childhood days? This was one poem that was there. I remember it distinctly because it was a part of, I think, when I was in grade 3 or 2 or 3. And I found it on the internet. I mean, there's this link given there. You could also go on that link and listen to this nice song. It's a beautiful song. So what you can do is you can use songs as resources, and students can and have an exercise like this where you have gap fills. Some information is missing. Make the students listen to the songs all right? And then come up with an exercise like this. And while they're listening to the song, they can do the fill up exercises. So I will tell you how I heard it. When my teachers in my childhood days, they sang this out. It was like this. Hey, little hen, when will you lay me an egg for my tea? Hey, little hen, when will you try to supply one for me? I want you to keep filling in as I sing. All right. If you are able to focus on the words, I tried recording it, but then I thought it would be better to sing it for you. Not a very perfect singer, but nevertheless, I'm trying. Hey, little hen, when will you lay me an egg for my tea? Hey, little hen, when will you try to supply one for me? Get into your nest, do your very best, get it off your chest. I can do the rest. Get into your nest, do your very best, get it off your chest. I can do the rest. All right. So, were you able to I lost an egg. I had a beautiful egg here and I cannot find it. Anyway, so were you able to fill in the blanks here while I was singing? So what you can do is you can use audio devices in the classroom, make students listen, all right, listen to songs, and then give them a fill in exercise like this. So the students will listen to the words, they will focus on the words, they will fill the words in the blanks, and they will write as they listen, right? So this is a great way of teaching language in the classroom. Also, I must tell you, all these activities that I've been using, even in my past sessions and the activities that I'm using here, I try to incorporate activities that are suitable for the multiple intelligences in the classroom. And I keep repeating it in every session. One size shoe does not fit all. You know, you have multiple intelligences in the classroom. You have musical learners, so they will learn really well with the help of music in the classroom, poetry and all. You have mathematical learners where you give them tasks that are suitable, analytical kind of tasks. You have intrapersonal or interpersonal learners, engage them in collaborative tasks or give them tasks separately that they can do on their own. Then you have visual spatial learners. So show them lots and lots of visuals in the classroom. That will also help them enhance their imagination. You have naturalistic learners in the classroom, linguistic learners in the classroom, kinesthetic learners when you engage them in games and all. So taking care of the multiple intelligences in the classroom is important. So when you do any session, any kind of activity with them, make sure that you add variety to your task. Have a musical task, have a games task, have a language task, or a dancing task. So it's going to be very, very productive. Your students are going to love those activities. Okay. Okay, reading for central idea. Okay, I talked about reading in between lines. Very good for for young adults. Reading for central idea, even younger ones can go through it. You give them small texts and then give them these clues or give them options and ask them to write down or to select what the central idea of the passage or the text is. For instance, here you can see. Let me read it out for you. The frog sat on the side of the pond. He was very still. His green color made him hard to see. All right, he kind of camouflaged. A bug flew near him. His tongue zipped out and he gobbled it up. Then the frog was still again. He waited for the next bug. So, what is the main idea in this passage? There are three options here. The frog is green in color. The frog is hungry. The frog does not move. So what do you think is the main idea? Text your answers. What is the main idea? Okay. Okay, let me move on to the next. So you can have passages where you can ask students to read and come up with the central ideas. So it's going to be very helpful in enhancing their analytical skills. So they will be analyzing the text and then come up with. So great way to help them learn the aspects of analyzing and synthesizing too. And also reading is a great way to teach idioms, right? Idiomatic expressions, because as they move from one level in the class to another, they will become familiar with different idioms, and idioms also strengthen language, as you all know. So here's one instance here. Courtney was sad. She had lost her favorite bracelet. Her best friend was going away for the entire summer. She had just found out that she was going to summer school. As a result, Courtney felt down in the dumps. Okay, she felt down in the dumps. Now, down in the dumps, what could it possibly mean? Was she sad, in the garbage, or losing things? What exactly could this idiomatic expression mean? All right. So it's a great way to add context to idioms and make your students learn the meanings of idioms. So just giving them a list and asking and giving them meanings is not going to help. You need to contextualize. All right. This word contextualization is it's a kind of a mantra in the classroom where you have to do it all the time. Give them context, all right. And also, it's a good idea to give them context that are relatable, that they can relate to in their life. All right, giving a context that they are not familiar with might not be very helpful. So give them context that are easily relatable, and they can identify, they can relate with those contexts. So here, what are your answers? Please put them in the chat box. Oh, this is another one. I love this idiom. Too many cooks spoil the broth. So here's this situation. Kathy and Tina were trying to throw a baby shower for their sister. It was getting very complicated though. Friends, aunts, and grandmothers, everyone wanted to help. Everyone, though, had a different plan, and now things were all messed up. How true. Too many cooks spoil the broths. What could it mean? A, your dinner is too spicy. B, things are wonderful. And C, too many people working on a task can make it worse. So, what could this idiom mean? Text your answers. Yeah, not a very difficult one. Okay, another way of making students understand is, visual spatial learners would love this because they love visuals. Can you read these idiomatic expressions? Okay, let me see how well aware you are of these idiomatic expressions. The first one. Okay, I would love to see your answers in the chat box. And I hope Monica or Ankesh, you can read those answers in the chat box. Okay, the first one.
So,
Okay, the first one. There's this cat holding on to a, it looks like a tongue. Okay, so what could this be? The second one, be an umbrella. And what's raining? The third one, out of the bag, what do you see? The fourth one, oh my God, something that should have been in gardens, on flowers, in a park. So the first one is, the cat's got my tongue. All right. So what does it mean? Sometimes when you are tongue tied, sometimes when words fail you, sometimes when you do not know what to say, a question comes up to you, or you have to express something, but then what happened? The cat catches your tongue. The cat gets your tongue. So the cat getting a tongue means that when you are short of words, when you are suddenly tongue tied. Second one, it's raining cats and dogs. It's been drizzling in Delhi, and I hope it rains cats and dogs. A heavy shower of rains. Third one, the cat's out of the bag, the secret is out. And the fourth one, I am feeling so hungry, or I'm feeling nervous right now. There are butterflies in my stomach. When you're hungry, then you have rats jumping in your stomach. So butterflies in the stomach. So visuals are a great way, and students love to read visuals. You can add some text to visuals if you wish, or just plain visuals to teach idioms. So that's also a part of. One thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's really important, is checking the speed of your learners when they read. Checking speed is very, very important. An average reader can read 200 words per minute. All right. So there are many, these check kind of, filters on the net. So you can check your speed limits and also your speed of reading. So you could check that, and it's very important that you make sure that your readers read with a particular speed and they do not slow down. And if they tend to slow down, or if they tend to mix up words, read a few words and then move backwards again, and then so that means that they need to get into this habit of reading. So they need to have a lot of practice. Now, there is this sentence there in this black box here. Are you able to read it? Okay, it's an upside down sentence. Sometimes you'll find, a lot of mirror. When I was showing you a text, probably, it was a mirror image of the text that you could see here, right? So what happens? If you are able to read that text, that means you already have a schema there in your mind, and you already know how to, you already know the meanings of those words. You have an idea of what those words are, and you are able to use even the words that are upside down. So as I was talking about speed is really important. So you need to make your students practice reading well so that they do not have a problem with speed. Okay. So you have lots of guide on the internet, and you can check your speed level too. And also one more thing to be noted here is that along with your speed, you must also ensure that the comprehension level is also there. Sometimes in an attempt to read very fast, what happens? You lose out on the sense of comprehension, okay? Because you want to read so fast that you skip out that area where comprehension is also important. So you need to read with comprehension. So speed should be there, but make sure that your comprehension is also there, right? So, and sometimes, it's the other way around. You read so slowly that, you get the right comprehension, but the reading is pathetic. So that's important. Ah, to help students in your classroom practice their reading skills. This is one strategy that I have used it on my students, and believe me, it has always proved to be very, very effective. And before I do this, I will also like to tell you about, whenever I do a reading session uh, in my classroom with students who need a lot of support in reading, and not just for reading, but also for speaking skills, right? There are these three phonations that I use in the classroom. One is called A phonation, the other is U phonation, and the third is E phonation. A, U, and E phonation. So what I ask my students to do is to take a deep breath, hold the breath, and then they will say for as long as they are able to hold their breath and say it out. So that's called A phonation. And then likewise, you do the E phonation. Take a deep breath, hold it, and then you say E, and likewise you do the U phonation. Okay, take a deep breath, hold your breath, and do oo. So what happens is, it is very helpful to make all these passages, all these areas that are needed to speak or to read, so they become clutter free. All right, they become really clear. So it's very important, before you begin to speak or before you begin to read, practice these phonations, and it also, you become less inhibited. So in the classroom, it could be a whole class activity, or when you're taking an online class, then too you could do it. These phonations are very, very helpful. Secondly, if there's a student who needs great help in reading and is not able to read really well, so he needs to be given a lot of time at home too. So give him this idea that he could watch a channel, let's say the BBC channel if it's a young adult, BBC channel, or maybe somebody at home could guide him, or if it's a session that you're taking in class, you could guide him. It's called shadow reading. Now, what one does in shadow reading is, for instance, there's this sentence on the top boxes you can see where that lady is standing. Up on the mountain top, I saw the sun set, right? So we're just taking this sentence as an example. Up on the mountain top, I saw the sun set. Now you have an idea of what an echo is, all right? You know what an echo is, okay? So this kind of reading is also called echo reading. Echo is when you say out something and then you hear your own, you hear the sound again. So kind of the echo sound is heard again. So in this kind of reading, what you do is go very slow with the sentence. When you reach the third word, as you can see, right, up on the, when you reach the third word, ask the student to pick up the first word then, right? So it's very important that he must be a very active listener. The child, the learner has to listen very actively. You can practice it in the, at your homes with your children, you can practice it in the classroom. So when you reach the third word, up on the mountaintop, up on the student will begin up on the, all right. So when you are here, the student would be here, right? So that is how you progress. So it's a level, like your level is going to be faster. You are going to complete the sentence faster because you started earlier, and the student would start it after, would end it after you. Okay, so this is called shadow reading. Just as a shadow lingers behind you, in the same way, the student would begin after you. So this is a great practice to enhance your students' reading skills. And if it's a reader in the classroom who needs thorough practice with reading, so you could practice shadow reading. So phonations and shadow readings, right? Okay, let's move on to this one. Making predictions. That's another way of teaching reading skills. It was the first time for Jenny to make an apple pie. She looked a little nervous. Suddenly there was a loud crash from the kitchen. What do you predict will happen next? All right. So you could ask your students to come up with their responses. So give them situations like these and ask them to come up with their responses. Okay. Another one here. Tim woke up late. He hurriedly brushed his teeth and got dressed. Then he rushed out. He managed to catch the bus, but then he remembered he had left the tap open. So what do you think? What do you predict would happen next? Now, these kind of exercises that activities that I'm sharing with you can be done as a reading activity in the classroom and also as writing activity in the classroom, right? So making predictions, making inferences. Katie was excited about that day. Happily, she put on her big red shoes and bright yellow outfit. Her mom helped Katie paint her face with big red circles on each cheek. Just before Katie ran to meet her friends, she attached two antennas on her head and two huge wings with beautiful patterns on each. She grabbed a huge paper flower in her hand and rushed out. So the questions: what was Katie excited about? What do you think she's dressed up as? Point out the words that gave you these cues. So these are the kind of activities that are very helpful for students to draw inferences. All right, so we did activities where they had to make predictions, and we did this activity where they could be asked to draw inferences. So what is the difference between these two words? What's the difference between the word predict and infer? All right, predict, when you can just guess what would happen, when you foretell what's going to happen. All right, it's a kind of a forecast. Infer, drawing conclusions. So these reading activities or even writing activities, they can be taken as are very, very helpful in the classroom. Coming back to writing, I know we are short of time, but I would just like to go through these and share these slides with you. There are these two approaches that I'm going to talk about today. One is a product approach and the other is a process approach. So my focus is going to be on the process approach. Now, what exactly is a product approach? I'll just tell you that it's a traditional approach, traditional now, but it is still being used, but it's not as productive as a process approach, though it is less time consuming, because in the product approach, the outcome is the main focus. The outcome, that is the outcome of learning at the end of a task, is the main focus in the classroom, whereas the process approach lays emphasis on the whole learning process in the classroom, what's happening in the classroom. Okay, so there's a lot of focus on activities. Product approach model text provided for analysis and imitation, but in the process approach, there's a lot of brainstorming ideas as starting points. So of course, it's a very, very student-centric approach. The process approach is a student-centric approach. Product approach could be student-centric, but there could be a lot of intervention by the teacher. In a process approach, drafting is very important. The teacher acts as a facilitator, and the PDP methodology, that is post, during, and pre, during, and post, that can also be effectively carried out. It is time consuming, but learning is definitely concrete, right? So also, when we are talking about the writing process, all right, writing process is not a very quick kind of a process. You cannot have shortcuts there. Make sure that when you engage your students in writing, there is enough scope for revision, enough scope for previewing, drafting, reviewing, editing, proofreading, and sharing. So that is why, when teaching has gone online, and if you happen to teach on Google, you can also engage your students in collaborative writing. Also on Zoom, I've made that attempt, and it's quite productive. So you can engage your students in collaborative writing, give them prompts, give them cues, ask them to write, ask them to share their writings, and then get ideas from each other. So that's a great way to engage them in the whole writing process. One example that I would love to share with you, and I've always used it in my workshops with teachers. It's a collaborative, creative writing exercise. Step one: ask your students to think of the time of day. Now, I've given you some times of days, right? There are 6: dawn, morning, evening, afternoon, twilight, late in the night. All right. So these are different times of the days. Ask students to choose one. All right. You could also have students sit in groups, or you can allocate virtual groups in your virtual classrooms. Each group must select one time frame, right? And then you give them this list which has 3 columns. The first column, you can say things you hear at that time of the day. All right. So if it is morning time, what are the things that a person hears at that time of the day? Things you smell at this time of the day. Morning time, brewing of coffee, you know. So, and third column, things people do at this time of the day. So what will happen? There will be a lot of collaboration, there'll be a lot of discussion, there'll be a lot of analysis, there'll be a lot of acceptance and rejection. So see how, affective filters are being lowered here, and people will learn to accommodate, and they will learn from each other, they will learn to share, they will learn to respond, they will learn to reject in ways that are suitable. And step two would be the writing part. When they start writing down, they will list, they will draft the first kind of list, and they can always have scope for revision. So once they're done with the list, now what you do is give them this format. As you can see, it's a poem format. It's a free verse poem. It's not a rhyming poem, but the repetition in the poem makes it very lyrical. As you can see, the poem begins with the time of the day. Every line of the poem begins with the time of the day. There's a lot of grammar in it, right? So here now, after a lot of analysis that the students have been engaged in, now is the time to synthesize their learning. They start synthesizing. And once they synthesize, they can fill in these gaps. The first one, dash, that's a time of the day, a time for. Now they will refer to the list that they have, and they will start filling in. So it's a very good step-by-step process of developing their writing skills. And believe me, when they recite these poems in class, they are absolutely fantastic, very lyrical, because there is repetition in the poem. Despite it not being a rhyming poem, it's a it comes out really lyrical. So great way to enhance their skills. Mind mapping is another way, when you want to engage them in writing tasks, give them an idea. Let's say, for instance, for young adults, if you're giving them report writing to do or story writing to do, let them come up, brainstorm in the classroom, let them come up with ideas, right? And have a mind map. Mind map looks somewhat like this. It can also be called a spider map, spidergram. So brainstorming, then coming, write down the points randomly as they utter those, you enunciate words from them, write them down randomly. All right. Then you organize them later in little hubs. All right. So you can create hubs there on the map, as you can see, and then allocate paragraphs, and then you come up with good writing texts. Writing activities for young learners online, you could have group brainstorming sessions. You could ask your students to research on a common topic, and engage them in questioning techniques. For example, take up a topic related to the central theme of your lesson. Let's say you have a lesson in your text that's related to eating healthy food. So brainstorm ideas about healthy food. Ask the students to give examples, so they'll be sitting in the confines of their homes and they'll be sharing ideas with you online. Ask students to write 5 questions to ask the cook in the family, the parents in the family about the healthy food that they could cook. And also the students may be asked to draw pictures of healthy food items and then write paragraphs about them, right? It's a great way to study the concept of shape. Like if they talk about parathas or rotis, you could ask them to, have a triangular paratha today or a circular paratha. So great way of teaching them other concepts too. So these are some of the ideas. Another is cause effect reading and writing. It's also very helpful in enhancing their skills of analysis. So as you can see, lots of text on one side and visuals. So what you can ask your students to do is match the visuals to the text and then come up with complete sentences. So you're giving them lots of prompts and cues. I poke my balloon with a needle too. Why would a person poke a balloon with a needle too? And then the ask the learner uh, to choose the picture from here, the visual, and then come up with a sentence and try writing down the sentence. The nurse gives the baby a shot, and then what happens? The baby cries. It's raining outside, so you must carry an umbrella. I lost my car key, so I'm not taking my car today. I will meet my friend today, and we are going to have a great time in the cafe. The artist paints a picture. Oh, I don't have a visual for this anyway, and displays it in the gallery. Match the phrase to the picture and complete the sentences, right? So this is one idea. Cause and effect idea again. Jack did not tie his shoe, so, and then the child can look at the picture and write what happened. He fell down. I left the gate open, so the cat went out. I got dirty in the mud. So what happened? Okay, write that down. I saw my brother crying. So what happened? This is one picture I must share with you and I love it. It's a visual prompt for writing. Look at the picture. It's such a beautiful picture. Can you see a tear in the eye of the crocodile? No wonder we talk about crocodile tears. So what is happening? The crocodile is looking at the album. It's a family album. And what does he see in that album? He sees a bag, he sees a shoe. What's happening? The PETA people will understand it so well, right? He's missing his, and then he says family album. So that's his mother there in the form of a bag, you know. So that's what man is doing, right? He does to nature. What can you see in the picture? The crocodile is shedding tears because he's missing his family. The family that is no longer with him, the family, the mother that's in the form of a bag now, and the father is in the form of a shoe now. Oh my God, this is such a pathetically gory picture. Anyway, dialogue writing is another way of making your student practice writing skills. Meet Minnie and Mark, they are neighbors. Minnie meets Mark at the shopping plaza. What do the two say to each other? Write down dialogues there. I wish we had more time so we could have done it in detail, but the paucity of time does not allow me. But one idea I would also like to share with you is you can also engage your students on in visual dictations. Great way of making them, draw out dictations. So they will listen, they will draw it out first, and then give them a task that could be a writing task. For instance, you can ask them to draw out a picture of your friend, dictate, make a give a dictation of a real funny friend, ask the students to draw it, and then the student can write down about the friend. And finally, one more example is free writing example. It's a very time controlled kind of an activity, very interesting activity in the classroom or virtually if you're teaching them. Tell them that you are timing their writing, and when you say begin, they have to start writing, right? So you have to give them one prompt, right? For example, one sentence: one day I went into the jungle. And after that, ask the students to write, and there are very strict conditions. They will not be allowed to lift their pen. If there is no idea in their mind, they need to write that down. Oh, right now I do not know what to write, so I cannot progress with the story. They must write that down too. Anything that's happening, even if it's a void in the mind, they must write it down. And ask them to do this for 1 minute, and after 1 minute tell them to stop. And believe me, you know even the pauses, the interstices, all these things have words they will come up with. Okay, So teachers, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I loved sharing this session with you. Though it was quite a hurried session, but nevertheless, I hope today you take back lots of skills and use these skills in your classrooms and you find them productive. Thank you very much, and I hope we could take some questions now. So it's back to CUP. Hi,
Yeah.
Ankesh,
So,
Monica. Yeah.
hi, ma'am. Hi. So, participants, if you have any questions, you can post it on the chat section so that we can pick it up for the trainer to answer. I can see a lot of thank you. Are you going to share the PPT? Not the PPT, but the recording would be shared to you. You can also visit the recording on our YouTube channel, Cambridge, India. You can find the recordings there.
Okay, so if you have any question, you can just read out the question to me since I'm not able to
Yes,
see the question. So if you could do that, I will
sure.
try to address some questions.
Yeah. How to correct children if they make inverted images?
Okay, if that's a very, very common mistake that students make, but I would not call it a mistake, right? It happens like, initially when the child starts to write, you would find, it's an inverted P, it could be an inverted B. There is a way of doing that correction. Do not stop it because right now at that stage, if it's a young learner, make sure that, his inhibitions, he's not inhibited and that motivation level does not come down. So give him that space to keep writing, and if it's a correction, it has to be a very subtle one. All right, maybe just introduce visual words in front of him so that he looks at the words, but please never ever tell the child this is wrong. This sentence is it's very, very detrimental to a child's motivation level. Never ever say that. Let the child go on. It could be when the child reaches a level in the classroom where he starts interaction with the peers. He'll start sharing with the peers, and this thing can be resolved at that stage. But if you see that it is persistent, there is a way of correcting it. It should not be done in a way that he feels intimidated with. Okay, so just present in a very subtle manner, write the correct form of the word and present it. Have lots of visuals around him, have the words around in the classroom. There's another strategy, it's called squatting the word strategy. You can have a kind of a squat. You know what a fly squat is? It looks somewhat like this with a rectangular hole in the center, and let him, identify words that he's making mistakes with, and he can just go and squat the word, and that way he himself would come about with this sense of awareness in him that this is the way the word is written. Okay, so there are ways of making those corrections. Thank you. Yes, any other questions? I hope
Ma'am, the
I've
next
answered.
question is from Liba Khan, ma'am.
Mhm.
Why the product approach is traditional?
Laiba, it is, traditional is not the right word. I could say that, it's a it's an approach that had been used and that is still being used, but it is an approach which is not as productive as the process approach. There are institutions, there are teachers who use this approach when there is paucity of time. There are activities where assessment is required at the end, so it is being used. I think traditional is not the right word, and you've pointed it out correctly. Okay, so we could say that it is not as productive as the process approach, because process approach allows the teacher to have a very comprehensive and a continuous assessment of learning in the classroom. All right, so probably I shouldn't have used the word traditional. It's not a traditional. As the landscape of learning keeps coming up with new ideas, we have this tendency of calling other things obsolete and traditional because we don't use them. But I think I can say that I should have not been so harsh in using the word. Okay. Yes.
Okay, the next question is, ma'am, how to inculcate the hobby of reading books in children?
This is so, so, so important, how to inculcate a hobby of reading books. Get in touch with the parents or the students, have their let them have their own, tell them, give them this idea that they must have their own reading corners in the house, right? A nice cozy corner which is exclusively for their reading. They must have, parents must be very active here, introduce children to lots of new kind of stationery material, lots of visuals, books and all. When they go to the market, make sure when they're buying two toys, let one be a book and one toy. So it's very important that everyone gets together and creates that kind of an ambience. And also, talking about books, having a reading corner, a nice mug there, and anything that a child can associate with reading, a nice cushion probably, which will give him a sense of comfort there when he can just sit and read a book. So introducing different genres in the classroom, all these things are very, very helpful. Lots of letters all around. So everyone has to make a very, very active, play a very active role here, the parents, the teachers, and everyone. Yes.
Ma'am, next question is, if a young learner comes from a family background where reading is not encouraged, how many library periods should there be in a week?
Uh, it's not about having a library period exclusively if you want to enhance a student's reading skill. Even if you have just one library period and you feel that your readers come from an environment which is not very, kind of resource rich environment in terms of books and all, in terms of the background of families. So what you could do is have your own class library. Ask students to get if students cannot get, then try arranging books in the classroom. Have your own little cozy corner in the classroom where on you can share a lot of reading material. So why does I don't understand why you have to be dependent only on the library period, right? You can have your own library period anytime in the classroom. And having a library does not mean that it should be full of books, because at times it might not be possible. So you can have lots of texts, you can have, and these are things that are easily available now. You can get lots of worksheets, you can get lots of text from the internet and use it in the classroom. Another idea is, have each student contribute any old book. It could be a magazine in any language, or but ideally English, if you're dealing with the English language. Have them donate one book in the classroom. It could be any old book. Have the class library, and on the birthday of any child, you could just share a book that way. So many teachers share birthday cards and all, so a book could be given to a child, and that would be a great kind of a gift for the child. So a library period is important, but I think any language period in the classroom, if a teacher feels that doesn't need analysis and feels that reading has to be done and it needs to be done extensively by the students in the classroom, then there are English periods, there are other periods that can also be taken up for this. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next question is from Neha, ma'am. How do you
Mhm.
present text features in segregation so that young learners can comprehend it well?
Text features and segregation, are you talking about different genres like poetry, drama, and prose? If that's the case, then I believe that there's another approach that's called a genre approach. Like if you want to familiarize your learner with different kinds of text, because there's a variety of text, so what you need to do is produce a lot of samples in the classroom. It's a genre approach which is very effective. For instance, if you feel that your learner needs to know the nuances of writing stories, so you need to have lots of stories in the classroom, so that the student has that scope of just going through the stories, skim and scan, and be familiar with the genre, and get used to it. So that's one way, if that is what you mean by uh, introducing texts in the classroom. So there are different kinds of texts. A genre approach is very, very helpful. It depends also on which level, what level of child you're talking about, the learner. Thank
Okay, ma'am. There
you.
is
And
a request for same kind of a session for senior classes whose reading
okay,
and learning habits are not being formed at a very early age. So we'll definitely discuss about it. The next question is,
sure.
how has the introduction of a virtual learning environment changed? Uh, Virtual learning environment has changed the way young learners or young students are reading or writing right now.
Sorry, how
Sorry,
has the
so I'll
virtual?
repeat the question. How
Yes.
has the introduction of a virtual learning environment changed the way young students learn through reading and writing?
Uh, See, right now, if you look at the scenario, if you look at the whole landscape of learning, reading and writing today, right? We are compelled to carry on this process online because of obvious reasons. But I do not think, it has drastically changed things in the sense that people are not reading books today. This is the perfect time to be familiar with books. We have books at home. All right, there's a lot of reading that's going on. So the virtual environment, it is a phase. It's a phase that's there in our lives. It's a reality that we are all exposed to. A lot has changed, the landscape has changed, but it does not mean that it has changed for worse, or that it's detrimental to the learning development or the learning progress that a child is going through. So there are ways to be in touch, right? Even if it's virtual, but there are ways to be in touch with your students even when it's a virtual classroom. So it has changed to some extent, but there are flavors of a real classroom too, which teachers can create while they're teaching their students online. Right now we are not in a face-to-face setup. Nevertheless, we are interacting and communicating with each other. So it depends on how we do things. All right, so there are lots of ideas, but how we take up an approach, how we deal with a certain problem, that makes a difference. So the scenario has changed, but we can make it productive with a little effort. Thank you.
Okay, the last question for the day, ma'am. There are children with different capabilities in class. Some love reading and are very good at it, while others are sometimes not able to identify even simple words. It gets difficult to do reading exercise in class. Any suggestions that you can suggest?
Yes, that's true. And that, that's why I said, reading is one skill in the classroom. That's a kind of a forgotten skill, because teachers also, cannot actually observe the kind of, skill enhancement that's taking place, because it's so difficult to assess a skill that is so quiet kind of a skill. It's a receptive skill. So teachers need to identify such students in the classroom, and teachers need to devote time to these students and help them with their and also I think one a good idea would be to be in touch with the parents too, because if it's young learners in the classroom and they have this problem, then it's very important that some work is assigned to them even at home. Parents ensure that they spend good quality time reading out to the students in the at home, because what happens is you tend to have a lot of differences in the classroom. There are some who are very good and there are some who are not so good. Okay, so in order to bridge that gap, we need to be in touch. So that triangle is very important with the parents, and also introduce that child, maybe if you have time, to give a little extra time to that child and practice a lot of reading, like I gave you some ideas of shadow reading, echo reading, practicing phonations in the classroom, the squat idea, squatting words and all. So introduce the child to words as much as possible, make him practice words, and it's going to be productive, I'm sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Uh, Thank you. There are few more questions, ma'am, but we'll take it through offline channel. So in case
Sure.
if we are not able to accommodate all of your questions, please don't be disheartened. You can also mail us at schools@cambridge.org, and we'll try to accommodate and answer back whatever we can. Post the webinar, after 1 hour, you will be receiving a mail from our side that the mail would have the recording of this particular session. In case somebody has missed out due to some technical glitch, they can watch the recording. The mail will also have a feedback link, so you can share your feedbacks. Your feedbacks are very valuable for us to bring out such sessions to you. Do share your feedbacks, and thank you for joining for today's session. And thank you, Gazala ma'am, for the time and for a
Thank you
wonderful
so
session.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.